We are joined by Labour Minister Pernell Charles Jr. Nearly at the break, Mr. Minister, but let me just ask you very quickly. You've had a chance to go through what is officially called the end of mission statement from the Special Rapporteur?
Yes, I looked through it. Let me first say good afternoon to you and to all your listeners. And yes, I had a chance to look on the report from Professor Obokata, and I can tell you that based on what I've seen, it, in some respect, ratifies, though we don't use the same terminology, some of what is coming out of our fact-finding report. Only thing that we go into greater detail in terms of the intricacies of how our agricultural foreign workers are affected. And our report shows percentages in terms of favorable and unfavorable experiences.
Hold that thought, Mr. Minister. Let's pick up with that if we could when we come back after the break. We'll soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with you on Beyond the Headlines. I'm Dion Jax-Milo. We're talking to Minister of Labour and Social Security, Pernell Charles Jr., against the background of a report that came out from the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Forms of Slavery. Now, just before the break, the minister had said that the report from the UN Special Rapporteur essentially validated the report that the Ministry of Labour had commissioned and that had come out. And I'm actually surprised to hear you say that, Minister, and I'll tell you why. When you look, for instance, at the report from the Special Rapporteur, just to read a couple sentences, he says, for instance, the agricultural and low-wage streams of the Temporary Foreign Workers Program constitute a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. Goes on later to speak about first-hand information from migrant workers, pointing to appalling working and living conditions in reality, saying the conditions can be prevented with effective labour and health and safety inspections, but that the Special Rapporteur was informed that such inspections are grossly ineffective. And he goes on, and then the report that the ministry had received, that we did report on my programs extensively, said in the executive summary, among other things, the finding revealed no systematic slave-like conditions on any of the farms visited. The conditions of the workers were described as good, although there were pockets of poor labor and industrial relations. We were able to observe a deep sense of pride and fulfillment among the vast majority of workers, and it went on about self-affirming presence and psychic fulfillment. And one of the things I had said on one of the discussions we did to the team that had done the report was that their conclusion and executive summary completely ignored any serious interrogation of their own data, which showed that there was serious concern among at least some of the workers. I think it was 1 or 3 in 10, as I remember, in terms of the concerns that had been expressed. So I'm surprised to hear you say that, because when you look at the thrust of the two reports, they're actually opposite.
So let me tell you where I'm coming from.
Sure.
Firstly, Professor Obokata, his title is Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Forms of Slavery, including its causes and consequences. So he's looking for that, and the definition in his context is not the same as the listener is going to grasp it. Listeners, when they hear slavery, they'll think about a whip and a chain and holding somebody involuntarily. That's why I say to you that it is unfortunate, because you assigning those hateful words and broad labels is a generalization that is very inaccurate and misleading. However,
sorry, I'm not sure. I don't understand. Could you explain what you're saying there?
You
don't agree with any that some of the conditions that the workers, workers are under, could be described as contemporary forms of slavery?
No, man. What I'm saying is let's move granular. So besides the terminology of slavery, where I think that there is a lot of overlap and perhaps support, is that if you look further into what he's saying, he has done an assessment of a vast program which includes not just migrant workers, but persons with disabilities, indigenous people, incarcerated persons.
Yes.
This is not something...
People of African descent.
Migrant workers. It was a broad scale.
Correct.
And Jamaican foreign workers, a very minute part of it. But when you look on our assessment that was done by our fact-finding team, you will note that we have defined that about 88% on the program indicated that their experience was fair to excellent, with about 67% saying it was either good or excellent. Only 12.4% of the workers described their experience as bad or very bad. And we go further to indicate what that means. Unfavorable view of the program included insufficient hours for work, short contracts, bad treatment from farmers, bad housing, poor working conditions, things similar to what he's defining as contemporary slavery. Now, it's important for Jamaica to note that this program is not perfect, but we have put together a structure, and we also know that it's a voluntary program, and that if any one of our workers at any point in time feel that there is reason where they are victimized, they have many, many options. Not only the tip line or to utilize the liaison officers, but they can have even open work permits based on their report made to the Canadian or Jamaican officials. So there are several structures put in place to ensure the protection of the rights and interests of our workers. However, that does not diminish the fact that there are some farms of the 600 where there's significant need for improvement. Matter of fact, in our fact-finding report, we go on to indicate that an analysis of the overall ratings according to province revealed 2 particular provinces where there were a larger proportion of workers who viewed their experiences as bad or very bad. And we have, in response to that, we have increased the number of liaison officers in those provinces to make sure that if the standards in those farms are lower than we deem acceptable, we move our farm workers, or maybe we have to cut off from sending any farm workers to those farms.
And has any of that happened so far? Since you've increased the liaison officers, what has happened?
Yes, it has happened.
Can you tell us what you've been hearing?
Well, we're on a full assessment since I've been here, as you know, and I'll be coming up. I can indicate to you, for instance, if we go to the Kominsky, I don't want to call too much, but let's take, for instance, those farm workers who I met with, who Jamaica is aware that I met with them because they indicated at least some expressions of concern as to why they were repatriated. What was the response to those farm workers? We went in, we had an immediate investigation. Our liaison officers were swift and active. I came in, my officials here came in, and those farm workers will be placed on the new season operation begins very soon.
I'm so sorry, you broke up a minute, miss. So could you repeat that sentence? Those farm workers, what?
No, I'm saying to you, let's take, for instance, the recent case that Jamaica would be aware of the farm workers who were repatriated, who indicated that they didn't know why they were repatriated, and there was a publication that assumed or assigned victimization to be the reason. What happened there? We went in, we had a swift, comprehensive investigation. Our liaison officers were active. I came into the matter as well. And in this instance, those farm workers, there has been no complaint filed against those farm workers, no reports of breach of contract against them. And so they will be placed in the next batch, in the season coming up, to be transferred to another farm. Right? So it is important for us to note that the purpose of the UN Rapporteur's, Special Rapporteur's investigation into Canada is to define whether Canada has made efforts to prevent or address contemporary forms of slavery. So his report will utilize those terminologies. But when we assign that now to our farm workers who are from Jamaica, whether it is on the seasonal program or other programs, it does us a disservice because that's not a solution to the problems that we have.
Well, let's be clear and recognize that the word slavery in relation to, as an analogy in relation to some of the conditions on this program, was first raised by the farm workers themselves.
Of course.
That's the first thing. And the second thing, as I said to As I said to Helene and Danny, let me just finish this point if I could, Minister. As I said to Helene and Danny, having read this report, my impression was that the entire report was aimed at trying to negate that assertion by the workers. And also, to be very clear, I've said this on numerous programs, I'm not at all trying to even suggest that there is a majority of workers. Indeed, the data in the report does not suggest that. I have been saying, however, that certainly the report did not do any significant interrogation of the approximately 1 in 10 situations in which the workers were saying bad and very bad. There were many unanswered questions in relation to the conditions that those workers were experiencing.
And let me say this, Dion, I don't think that the report could have done all that was necessary, and so it is for us, post that investigation, to go deeper into the situation, which we are doing now, and to make sure that if we find any circumstance where Jamaican workers are being abused or victimized, that we take swift action and we do so boldly. And I have said that, and that's what we're doing. Matter of fact, I want to tell you this. You see, when a worker comes out and says, listen, this is like slavery, he should be able to say so, because we're living in a democracy. It's freedom of expression. But it doesn't mean that I have to accept that it is actually slavery, where you have shackles and a whip. No, it is his expression.
Yes, but I don't think in 2023 that's what people think slavery means, though. They understand it, I think.
Yeah, but the reality is, Dion, that when a farm worker says that he's in conditions that are likened to slavery, the reality is that there are conditions that are not favorable, poor working conditions, maybe even a bad relationship between himself and the management,
abuse,
whatever it is, and he should feel free to say that.
And I'm saying as well, though, Minister, in 2023, I think people do have a broader understanding of what workers mean when they use that particular phraseology.
Tell you in my conversations that is not so, because I've had persons actually call me.
I mean, in some of your conversations that is not so, the people with which you have spoken.
But the reality is, this program is a program, and I'm talking now about our farm work program. For 57 years, we have had a memorandum of understanding and agreements with Jamaica, between Jamaica and Canada. We have had thousands of workers who, their families, their lives, their communities have been bettered, improved because of this. Contributions to our economy, to their economy.
Can you hold 1 second, Minister? I have to take the break. I just need to take the break. I want to come back, allow you to finish that point, and just ask you just 1 or 2 more quick questions, if we could. Minister of Labour and Social Security, Pernell Charles Jr., talking to us. Back in a moment. Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with you on Beyond the Headlines. I'm Dion Jax-Miller, talking to Minister of Labour and Social Security, Pernell Charles Jr., when talking to us about the government's response to concerns about the Canadian Farm Work Programme. Can you tell me what happens from here, Minister?
We were saying a while ago, Dion, that there are more than 9,000 farm workers in Canada. And a lot of those workers, a large portion, more than 80%, are returning workers. You have some workers who are up there for 40 years, 30 years. It's important for us to note, because I want to not make light of any of the commentary from the report, and I want to be clear that I understand the concern in terms of many of our workers, or some of the workers, likening the program to slavery. Now, let me tell you, outside of the bad working conditions, poor working conditions in some areas, every farm worker is free to leave. Every farm worker is free to make a report. Every farm worker is free to speak to their liaison officer. Every farm worker is free to apply for open work permit and get a transfer to another farm. If the farm worker feels that they will be victimized, if they are identified, there's an anonymous tip line that they can utilize.
Yeah, the report speaks of the fact that that is a protection in principle that doesn't work in practice because of how long it takes for those transfers to come through.
And I want to agree with you that there's need for improvement, and that's what we are focusing on now. But it's important for the persons who are listening to understand that the government, in our relationship and agreement with Canada, we have a construct that presents a framework to protect the interests of the farm workers, even if it is not perfect. Matter of fact, every year, all of the jurisdictions that are in this program come together, and I'll be going to Trinidad soon to meet with Canada and the other members countries in the CARICOM who are part of the program to discuss again the conditions of work, the living conditions, the conditions of pay, and all of those factors, so that we can ensure as best as possible that any of our farm workers going up are experiencing a positive experience, one that will allow for them to be able to protect themselves, send the money to their family, and want to go back the next year.
All right, and let me just say two things before you just tell us quickly what's next, before and I release you. First of all, the perpetual statements about how important the farm work program is, we understand that. I mean, I don't think there are many Jamaicans who don't know people who have been on farm work and don't know the importance of the farm work program to families and to communities. It's precisely for that reason, Minister, that there has been concern that when you speak, for instance, of people being free to leave to do what? If it is that this is people's means of livelihood, a lot of people and farm workers have said this, that they shut up because they want to ensure that their salary, their money is protected, their family is protected. And as I said to you, the report spoke to that and spoke how problematic the process is because of how long it takes.
Yes, so it is not in my intention to have any defense of whether that occurs or not. That does occur. And that's the reason why my focus now is on remedying those situations. However,
no, I was just responding to the fact that you are saying they're free to leave and free to go work somewhere else. And I'm saying, but it's been identified that that's an issue. And just one last thing, Minister, and then I'll let you respond and finish up. Also, I wonder if you've given any thought to the possibility that people for whom a particular job is extremely important and who find that, let's say, their dignity is assaulted and assailed in various ways, that they're embarrassed that some of the things that they have to put up with sometimes do not want to talk about it.
Of course.
And especially to family members, especially to children. I've heard people saying, oh, my father this or my mother this, and nobody ever. A lot of times people, that's not something you necessarily want to speak about publicly.
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
In my first discussion with the liaison officers, I advised them that I'd be speaking directly to farm workers because I am aware that farm workers may not be as willing to expose themselves in terms of the indignity of what they're going through, if it is that they're on a farm where they have poor working conditions. That is why we put in place systems that said, listen, people must have a free and fair opportunity to be able to speak anonymously and openly. That's why I said if somebody wants to define it, however you want to define it, we want to hear it so that we can address it, even if I don't agree with the definition. Because my ultimate goal is to make sure that as Minister of Labour and Social Security, any one of my farm workers that leave Jamaica and go anywhere in the world are able to work and live with dignity. That is the ultimate goal. Now, it's not perfect. It's not perfect, Dion.
Got you.
But working with you, work with other Jamaicans, we are going to make sure that we improve the system. And that's why we welcome any investigation from the UN, from Canada, from Jamaica, because all of these things help us. It gives us data. It gives us advice to construct and improve the system. And we're going to continue to monitor, continue to evaluate, continue to improve.
So what's next in 30 seconds, Minister? What happens next?
What's next is I will be going up again, as I told you. We will continue to strengthen our liaison services. We're going to continue to push for increased engagement with our farm workers. And we have continued the efforts to make sure that they know their rights, they're oriented properly, and we're working with our partners, Canada and others, to make sure that the systems and the processes are at the standard that we deem acceptable.
All right. Always appreciate the update, Minister. Thank you so much.
All right. All the best to you.
All right. Talking there with the Labour and Social Security Minister, Parnell Charles Jr.